The wind that night was strange. It didn't howl like it usually did across the plains, but whispered, low and steady, as if carrying a message too old for the modern world. The cowboy leaned on the porch railing, eyes on the horizon that had swallowed the sun hours ago. Shadows crept over the land like memory, soft and slow and certain. His horse had gone still, his lantern dimmed. And behind him, in their little home carved from cedar and worn faith, she was not speaking. She never raised her voice when she hurt. That was her way. She folded her pain into the smallest gestures, a hand brushing hair behind her ear too many times, a silence that stretched a little too long between words. Tonight, it had been a comment, almost careless. Something about how he'd forgotten the day they met. He hadn't, not really, but the way she'd looked at him when he hesitated made it feel like he had. They'd been drifting, he realized. Not far, not loud. Just quietly. Like a boat slipping its rope in the dark. He turned, stepping back inside. The fire was low, casting the room in a gentle amber. Her shawl was missing from the hook. The front door hadn't creaked. She had left like she always did, without sound, without demand. He moved outside again, scanning the dirt trail that twisted between the cottonwoods. The stars blinked wide open above. No footfalls. No echo. Just that wind. That steady, strange wind. At first, he didn't worry. She was strong. Stronger than anyone gave her credit for. But after an hour passed, and then another, and her silhouette didn't return under moonlight, a thin thread of panic pulled at his chest. He saddled the horse. Took the lantern. Left behind the warmth and the quarrel and rode out into the night that felt like it was watching him. They searched the next day. The whole town came, not out of kindness, but because they had nothing better to do. The preacher's son walked the riverbanks. The storekeeper's wife checked the wells. The sheriff rode up to the old canyon edge and spat in the dirt like it might answer him. Nothing. No tracks. No sound. No sign. The cowboy kept looking long after the others gave up. Days blurred into weeks. He rode farther each morning, came home later each dusk. He combed sagebrush and sand, climbed ridges, followed coyotes hoping they'd lead him to her dress caught on thorns. Once he found a silver pin, tarnished but familiar. His hand shook when he picked it up, but it was old, buried too deep to be hers. Grief settled into his bones like cold. Not loud. Not all at once. Just steady. He stopped shaving. Ate less. Spoke only when spoken to. People whispered about him like he was already half ghost, half gone. But his eyes never stopped scanning. Not even in sleep. One dusk, near the beginning of winter, he sat by the edge of the mesa. It was a place she used to love, said it made her feel like she could hear the sky breathing. The land was painted in soft rose and rust, shadows long and sacred. He sat still, the air humming like a memory. That's when he heard it. Not a voice. Not quite. More like a pull. His lantern, resting on the rock beside him, flickered and flared without touch. A low tremble passed through the ground. And then, the air in front of him shimmered. Like heat rising from sand, only colder. Sharper. And there, only for a breath, the world opened. It was like looking through water. On the other side, hills that did not belong to this century. Smoke rising not from chimneys but from open fires. Shapes of people in clothes too rough, too raw, moving with rhythm and purpose. And just before the light snapped shut, he saw her. Standing still. Hair braided differently. Dress made from animal hide. Holding the hand of a child. Not frightened. Not lost. Just distant. Changed. Then it was gone. As if it had never happened. He sat frozen, every part of him trying to make sense of what he'd seen. The air was still now. No wind. No sound. Just a lingering ache in his chest and the scent of smoke that shouldn't have been there. He didn't sleep that night. He didn't return home. He stayed on the mesa until morning, heart thudding like hooves on dry ground. The next day, he returned with a spade. At the canyon's edge, Where no grave should ever be dug, he carved a small hole and laid a bundle inside. Her letters, her hairbrush, the dried wildflowers she once tucked into her journal. He left a note, too, scratched in shaking hand. Asterisk, if time took you, I'll follow. If you forgot me, I'll remind you. If you became someone new, I'll love her too. Asterisk. He packed light. Just a canteen, a journal, and a ring. Each night, he returned to that mesa. Waiting. The townsfolk thought he'd lost his mind. They stopped calling him the cowboy and started calling him the widow who wouldn't believe. But he knew what he saw. On the 7th night, the ground trembled again. The lantern flared. And the shimmer returned. This time, it stayed open. He stepped forward. Not quickly. Not with heroism. But with something deeper. A vow. And as he crossed the veil between then and now, the wind whispered behind him, not goodbye, but go. He stepped through like a man waking into a dream he half expected to hurt him. The light around him rippled and folded, then vanished like a tide pulling back into unseen shores. For a heartbeat, the world was silent, not empty, but listening. Then the smells hit him, raw earth, burning wood, something metallic in the air like rain before it falls. And above all, life, wild and old and unshaped. The landscape stretched before him in broad sweeps of untouched hills, soft and green with brush he didn't recognize. The trees were older here. Taller, with bark the color of smoke and leaves that whispered in a language older than English. Somewhere in the distance, drums beat slow and steady. A call, not a warning. The cowboy stood still, afraid that even blinking too hard might wake him from whatever riddle he had walked into. His boots sank slightly into the ground. The soil here was softer, richer, nothing like the dry dust back home. He walked, not quickly, not with aim. Just one step after the next, like his body knew what to do while his soul caught up. There were no signs of his world, no fences, no telegraph poles, no forgotten bottles lying in the brush. Just sky and earth and the long breath between. After what might have been an hour or a lifetime, he came to a rise overlooking a valley. Smoke curled from fire pits. Tents made of hide and bone formed a small circle. Children played with sticks and stones. Women crouched near the flames, stirring pots. Men moved like shadows, lean and wary. Spears in hand. Eyes sharp. A settlement untouched by centuries. And there, on the far end of the circle, she was. She stood with her back to him, sleeves rolled past her elbows, grinding something in a stone bowl. Her hair was woven into braids he didn't recognize, her dress stitched with colors not from any store. She looked smaller from afar, but not frail. She moved with ease, like this world fit her bones better than the one she came from. A boy ran past her, maybe 5 or 6, and she reached out instinctively, ruffling his hair with a mother's rhythm. He couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. His heart ached in 2 ways, joy and grief, tangled so tightly he couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. She was alive. But she was gone. He didn't approach. He watched. That was all he could do. Like staring through a window of a home he no longer owned. Night came fast in this world. The stars bled brighter than he'd ever seen. No oil lamps. No noise. Just firelight and whispers. He slept under a tree that smelled like cedar in dreams, holding his coat around him like armor. He dreamed of her laughing, but it wasn't his memory. It was one this land had given her. The next morning, he woke to footsteps. Light. Bare. He stayed still. A child stood watching him, eyes wide and curious. The boy. The one from before. His skin was warm bronze, his eyes sharp and intelligent. He held a small carved animal in his hand. A gift or a warning, the cowboy couldn't tell. He knelt slowly, not speaking, and offered his canteen. The boy sniffed it, sipped, then ran. That evening, 2 men came. Not young, not old. Their hair was braided with bone and ash, their arms strong with the weight of survival. They said nothing, only motioned with their heads for him to follow. He did. They led him to the edge of the village. No one screamed. No one stared. Just quiet curiosity, as if they'd seen stranger things crawl from the sky. She wasn't among them. He was given a place near the fire. Food. A blanket. No questions. No names. Just space to be. Days passed like this. Watching. Waiting. Earning trust not with words but presence. He hunted small game and laid it by their tents. He tended firewood. He fixed a basket with leather string when he saw it torn. The boy began following him, curious and silent. Eventually, the boy took his hand. And still, she did not look at him. She saw him, surely. Her gaze brushed past him in the way a stranger's might in passing. No pause. No flicker. As if the face he wore belonged to a ghost she'd never met. He wondered then, had time taken her memory? Or had she buried it herself? One night, while carving wood near the fire, the elder sat beside him. His face was a map of years. He pointed at the stars, then to the cowboy's chest. "You're not from here," the elder said, words thick with accent but clear. The cowboy nodded. "Still, your heart walks like ours." He said nothing in return. But that night, he dreamed again, only this time, she was holding his hand. Not her hand now. Her old hand. And whispering something he could no longer understand. He began singing softly one afternoon, out of habit more than hope. A song she once hummed in the mornings while cooking eggs. A song that used to make her cry without reason. The boy sat beside him, mimicking the melody. And across the circle, her head turned. Her eyes met his. For the first time. Something flickered. But then she turned away, slow, unsure. Like the memory hadn't landed, only brushed the edges. Later that evening, as the fires burned low and the stars poured overhead, he stood alone on the edge of the circle. The boy asleep beside his satchel. Her voice drifted across the night, barely audible. She was singing. The same song. But slower. Like she wasn't sure she remembered it right. And for the first time in months, a tear slipped down his cheek. He was not a ghost. Not yet. Not entirely. The boy brought him berries one morning, cupped in small hands stained violet. The cowboy took them gently, nodding his thanks, and the boy smiled, that wide, gap-toothed smile that made something old and aching inside him stir. The child had her eyes, that was clear now. The same soft tilt, the same quiet watchfulness. He didn't ask, didn't need to. Blood knows blood, even across centuries. They walked together through the woods, the boy skipping ahead, pointing at birds and animal tracks like secrets, only he could interpret. The cowboy listened more than he spoke. In this land, words meant less than presence. He learned the rhythm of the tribe by how they moved, when they rose, when they ate, when they prayed to fire and rain. No one questioned his place now. He had earned it not with stories or demands, but by being still long enough for the land to forget he was foreign. She spoke to him for the first time near the stream. Her voice, when it came, was quieter than he remembered, like a song played on a cracked flute. She asked if he was healing well from his fall the week before. A branch had broken under his weight, and he'd scraped his back badly. He'd said nothing of it, but she must have seen him wince. He turned to her slowly, heart knocking like an old door in a windstorm. "It's nothing," he said. She nodded and walked away. But that evening, a poultice lay by his tent. Crushed herbs wrapped in soft cloth. The same way she used to tend to him after cattle kicks or thorn scratches. The firelight painted her in gold that night. He watched her across the circle, saw the way her fingers braided another woman's hair, the way her smile lingered after a child's joke, the way she stared into the flames when she thought no one watched. She was not the woman he married. She was something older. Something stronger. He was not sure she remembered him, not truly. But the way she moved near him now, not around him, but toward him, suggested her soul did, even if her mind did not. One afternoon, he carved a horse from wood and gave it to the boy. The child stared at it, then at him, then ran, not away, but toward her. She turned as the boy held it up, beaming, and her eyes flicked to the cowboy. That night, she sat beside him. No words. Just silence that didn't feel empty. They watched the flames as if searching the same memory. After some time, she whispered, "He doesn't remember his father." He nodded. "He was kind," she said, as if tasting the word to see if it still fit. "But afraid of the world. He died when we were fleeing the old place. I buried him with stones." There was no need to ask where the old place was. "I'm sorry," the cowboy murmured. She nodded again. "You remind me of something. Or someone. I don't know." He didn't push. Just watched the fire flicker in her eyes. The days lengthened. Spring whispered through the trees. He helped the boy craft a sling for stones. He fixed a broken fishing net with sinew and patience. Once she laughed, not loudly, but fully, when the boy tripped over a root and pretended it was a bear that got him. That sound broke something open inside the cowboy. It had been so long since he'd heard it, it felt like being blessed. She began sitting beside him more often. Sometimes they spoke of little things, herbs, stars, weather. Other times they sat without speaking at all. In those silences, something grew. He wanted to tell her everything. Wanted to say her name, the name they buried in the other world. But he held it back. The truth, he knew, was a delicate thing. A flame too soon touched could burn what it meant to warm. One evening, he walked to the water's edge alone, stars reflecting in ripples like scattered memories. She followed, though he hadn't heard her approach. She stood beside him, arms folded. "I dreamed of a train," she said. "It moved like thunder. I sat beside someone. I couldn't see his face." His breath caught. "What did it feel like?" "Warm," she whispered. "Like safety. Like home." He turned slowly. She was watching the water, not him. "That man in your dream," he said softly. "I think he still waits for you. Not back there. Not in time. But here. In this world." She looked at him now, eyes deeper than before. A storm of recognition behind them, or maybe just the ghost of one. "You speak like you know me." "I do." She didn't flinch. Didn't step back. But the space between them was heavy with unspoken things. "I don't know who I was," she said. He nodded. "But I do." They stood like that for a while, wind playing in the leaves, the stream whispering its endless story. She took his hand, not fully, just her fingers grazing his, like the start of a memory returning. "I'm not ready to remember," she said. "I'm not here to make you," he answered. "But you stay," she murmured. "All this time. I had nowhere else to be." And in the hush that followed, a promise bloomed, not of returning to what was, but of becoming something new. Later that night, as the wind picked up and distant drums echoed through the trees, the boy stirred from his sleep and ran into their tent, crying of flames in the sky and warriors with painted faces. She held him close, fear rushing back into her eyes. And outside, the first shadow moved across the moon. The boy's cry fractured the night. Not the ordinary cry of a startled dream, but the sharp edge of fear children rarely fake. The cowboy rose before thought, his hand already at the old knife tied to his belt. She clutched the boy to her chest, rocking him, whispering soft words in a tongue the cowboy still barely understood. The fire inside the tent flickered low, shadows dancing on the hide walls. Outside, the night rustled in a language older than wind. He stepped out first. The air had shifted, not in temperature, but in presence. Something was watching. A silence too deep for peace. He scanned the woods beyond the village, heart thudding slow and heavy. Then came the sound, a bone whistle carried on the breeze, barely audible, but unmistakable. A warning. A ritual. A threat. By dawn, scouts returned with news. A rival tribe. Fierce. Hungry. Driven by a long winter and older grudges. No full attack yet, just eyes in the trees and broken twigs where feet had passed. But the message was clear, they were not alone. The elders gathered. Plans were spoken in low voices, hands moving across sand to draw lines and circles. Spears were sharpened. Mothers tied their babies close. The boy stayed near the cowboy's side, fingers curled around his coat. She did not speak much that day, only moved through her tasks with the tight precision of someone who had survived invasion once before. By nightfall, the drums had stopped. So had the birds. The wind no longer whispered, only held its breath. He found her at the edge of the woods, where the trees began to lean in. She stood still, arms folded, eyes searching shadows. "You've seen war," he said gently. She didn't look at him. "I've seen what it leaves behind." He waited. "I ran once," she whispered, "with my belly full of life and my hands empty. I buried a man I didn't love and gave birth with strangers holding my legs. I thought that was the end of me." He stepped closer. "It wasn't." "No," she said. "But it ended something." The boy was hers. The grief was hers. The strength, that, too, had become hers, grown not from triumph but from the long, slow ache of surviving. "I used to pray someone would come back for me," she said. "Then I stopped praying. And now here you are." He didn't answer, because there was nothing to correct. "I don't know what you want from me," she said. "Not the past," he said. "Just today." She turned to him, and for the first time, she looked at him not as a ghost or a stranger, but as a man, real and standing still. Her eyes shimmered. Then she stepped away. That night, firelight warmed the circle. The children were quiet. The warriors silent. He sat with the boy sleeping against his leg. She came to him slowly and placed a carved stone in his hand, a figure of a bird in flight. "For protection," she murmured. "Or memory." He turned the stone in his fingers, feeling the soft grooves where her hands had worked. "You remember me," he said softly. "I don't know your name," she replied. "But I remember how I felt when I heard your voice. Like I'd known it in a dream I was too afraid to believe." He smiled, not with joy, but with recognition. Grief and love had always spoken in the same breath between them. Before dawn, the first cry came, not from a child, but from the woods. A high-pitched howl, like bones scraping bone. Then came the thunder of feet. They came fast. The warriors rose. Spears lifted. Arrows flew. The village burst into motion, chaos and smoke and screaming. The cowboy ran toward her tent. She was already there, the boy wrapped tight in her arms. "Go," he said. She didn't move. "He won't run without you." He scooped the boy into one arm and pulled her with the other. They darted between burning tents, ducking behind fallen hides, the ground trembling with war. A raider lunged. The cowboy turned just in time. The blade scraped his arm, fire searing through flesh. He struck back with the butt of his knife, and the man dropped. He pushed her ahead toward the woods where the others fled. But the boy twisted in his arms, pointing back toward the center of the village, screaming a name the cowboy didn't understand. One of the children was missing. She didn't hesitate, turned and ran back into the smoke. He cursed under breath, set the boy behind a rock, and followed. He found her near the chief's tent. A child, no more than 4, stood crying amid the flames. She ran for him, and just as she reached him, a second raider emerged from the dark, blade high. The cowboy didn't think. He threw himself between them, catching the blow across his side. Fire bloomed through his ribs. He staggered, dropped to one knee, then rose again with a roar that came from the deepest marrow of him. He struck once, twice, and the raider fell. She was there then, her hands on his chest, blood warm beneath her fingers. "You're bleeding," she said, her voice cracking. "Still breathing," he rasped. She didn't let go. Not this time. The child clung to her leg. Behind them, the village still burned. But the sounds of battle were fading. The tribe had driven them back. He sank to the ground, chest heaving, blood soaking the earth beneath him. She cupped his face, whispering a name, his name, the one she hadn't spoken until now. "I remember," she said, tears cutting lines through ash on her cheeks. And as the world narrowed to light and pulse and the sound of her voice, he closed his eyes, not in surrender, but in knowing. She remembered.